Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic video. I started always trying to think of some new ideas and new formats and new and different series that I can do on different movies. So I started this new series. I bought a whole bunch of movies last week at Opera House Video, and it was great. I bought a handful of movies that I had seen before, and then also a few movies that I've never seen before. Probably mostly movies I haven't seen before. Mostly DVDs. I did pick up some Blu-rays. So pretty mixed thing. I got this big horror collection that has 15 movies on it, and I'm excited about watching that. There's a lot on that I haven't seen. So looking forward to that. I think they're more in the lines of the exploitation world. So, and again, I love all kinds of movies, so I try to check out as much stuff as I can. And this sale that I went to last week, which was a week from from the past Saturday, from yesterday, was pretty fantastic. And it was Opera House Video, the video shop here in Belfast, Maine. They started doing these sales every few months. They did one in June at the beginning of the summer, which was pretty awesome. And I managed to buy a bunch of movies. Got a ton of like really great exploitation movies, which was super sweet. This time, not so much around, but I still got a lot of movies. Probably actually picked up more movies this time, but they were more, there were some real low budget and some good horror movies, but mostly more in the kind of commercial film world, which I love, and snagged them up. So I started this new series around that where I'm just basically reviewing every movie that I bought, even if I didn't like it. I generally just focus on reviews for movies that I really love or that I discover for the first time. But I figure why not just do a format of or a show where I'm just going to review everything at face value on how I feel about it. Sometimes I think it's really good to analyze something that you might not really like. And then also, it can be anything in the arts. Like you can look at it in two different ways. Say for instance, there's a song you really like, or that you hear for the first time, or a band or an album. And a lot of times, the way my head works is I'll like think of not only will I probably listen to it a lot and check it out, but I'll start like picking up on certain things that I feel make the songs really exciting or really interesting. And I'll like make a little kind of checklist in my head. Maybe it's the melody, maybe it's the rhythmic kind of ideas, it's the production, all those kinds of things. And I do that and analyze things that way, because it does really influence me. The music that I write for my band Quantum, it very much has an influence on that. And sometimes I'll actually take ideas from that process. Sometimes consciously, a lot of times it comes out subconsciously, but it's always stirring in my head. And then on the opposite side of the thing of the spectrum, when say it's a movie I see or band or whatever it is that I'm not really digging it or I'm not liking it very much. I'll sometimes do the same thing of where, okay, I'll make a little mental checklist, like for me personally, why I think that this thing isn't really connecting or isn't really very good. And again, I'll go through that little checklist of, maybe the production isn't really great or that there isn't really a hook or the song isn't really saying anything or it feels like things feel like it doesn't feel organic, it feels forced, all those kinds of things. And I do that with films too, and I think that it's good because when it comes to critique and maybe reviewing a film or whatever it is, it's a good exercise, I think, to understand kind of both sides, and maybe by understanding both sides as to why it might work or might not work for you personally, giving a good discussion or laying out your case or an argument as to why you have arrived in that place for good or bad. So this is a new thing. This is a new format, our new show to basically just talk about movies, whether they're good or not, certain things I really like about them, or certain things that I really love about them. So I started this show, and this today's movie is going to be the second in the series that I started. I have one video that I just uploaded that will be coming out at a later date, which was the first one in this series of my random movies that I bought at Opera House Video during their big sale, and this will be the second video. So I've been actually a big, huge fan of Mel Gibson for a very very long time. The first movie I ever saw with Mel Gibson that I really was super kind of enamored with him, which was a movie he actually directed, and that's Hamlet. He did a version of Hamlet, I think, back in the, geez, it was a long, long time ago. I remember seeing it as a kid, and I believe it was in the 90s. And just an extraordinary movie. It was a movie he directed. It was, I think it might have been the first movie I ever saw with him. And then it also, with that, I was really young when it came out, and I remember I was in middle school or high school when that film came out, and it got me into reading Shakespeare. It piqued my interest as to what is this whole uh, English thing, and I was just getting into reading books and things like that. But that was the first movie I ever saw him in, which is kind of a funny thing to say. And it was a movie he directed. And then after that, I had seen The Road Warrior, which is probably my favorite movie of his that he's been in. And so I've been following his career, and then the other movie that really made me a huge fan of him as a director and as an actor was Braveheart. I love that movie to death. I think it's an amazing spectacle, an amazing film. He's gone on to become I think a really great director. He's made some really great movies. He's been in tons and tons of movies. I've always loved him as an actor. I think he's one of those guys and one of those actors that can be in a movie that is not very good, but he has a certain kind of charisma and personality on the big screen that is usually always terrific and always kind of delivers. So, and I think he has a really cool, essentially two different careers going on, where he still is a really great actor and a tremendous director, and he's able to kind of put all that together. And also, like for instance, Braveheart, where he actually stars in his own movie and is able to pull it off so well, just tremendous. So today is on a Mel Gibson movie that is something he starred in. And I saw it years ago when it came out, and I completely forgot it. It was at the sale at the Opera House Videos, and it was on DVD, and I picked it up. It was super cheap, so I figured, what the hell? And that is Mel Gibson's The Edge of Darkness, or Edge of Darkness, Mel Gibson. I saw this movie years and years ago. It came out in 2010, so it's been out for quite a few years. But I had completely forgotten this movie. So I saw it and I was like, what the hell? I'll buy it. And it was super cheap. And most of the movies I did buy are DVDs. I typically try to, when it comes to buying movies and collecting movies, I try to make Blu-rays my priority as far as being a collector of movies. I just think it's the best format. 4K is something I kind of want to get into, but then I'm like, okay, if I get 4K, I know it looks great. I have seen 4K movies and they are just ridiculous in a good way. But at the same time, that means I got to buy more editions of movies that I already have multiple copies of, and it's like, always upgrading. So I don't know. I'm really happy with Blu-ray, so I don't know. We'll see what happens. But most of the movies I did buy were DVD, and that's fine if they're cheap and they're pretty good quality. I don't really care. At the end of the day, it's like It's good quality. The one I don't buy VHS anymore. I won't buy any more VHS just because the quality is still really good, but for the most part, in comparison, it sucks. So I try to stay away. I did buy. I still have a VHS player that works, and I still love a lot of the movies. I have a lot of VHS tapes, but the quality sucks in comparison. And I think a lot of people hold on to VHS for the wrong reasons. It's purely out of nostalgia. And I think people have this thing. I've seen it talked about a lot by people who collect VHS, and I know people that's all that they do. But they have this thing of like when it comes to especially to like exploitation world, they feel like, well, that's the way. These are gritty, low budget, dirty movies, so it has this extra aesthetic or attraction to watch it on VHS because it's part of that, and that's the real way to see those movies. When which is like, people can like what they want, but really that is completely and utterly ridiculous when it comes to your argument or your reasoning as to why VHS is so like cool. Because I just saw an interview with Bill Luswig, one of the greatest forces in the world of exploitation, the director of Maniac Cop, the director of Maniac. He is the CEO and runs the one of the best companies that puts out all of these great exploitation movies on Blu-ray and 4K, and now that is Blue Underground. And I saw an interview with him recently, and he was talking about Blu-rays, all these new editions of films, and all of these movies, like these super low-budget, obscure movies getting a second life. And then he was talking about 4K, and he said this guy who was interviewing him was asking him, so what do you think about that? There's a lot of people out there that say, well, they keep it elite and they keep it, this cult. They want to keep it as this cult thing, so they only buy those kinds of movies on VHS because they feel like that's like the way to go. That's the perfect way to see those movies. And he's like, no, it's like actually the worst way. He's like when you actually get hold of the original print and the film of these movies and you actually watch it in that format, it's incredibly pristine and just gorgeous and beautiful. He said it's not, when you see something on VHS, he said it's like, it's actually the worst quality you can see a movie as far as the transfer. And he said when you actually see, like he was talking about acquiring one of his movies that he felt was lost, he watched it, and he said that the transfer of that, of seeing it in this pristine glory, is like watching it on 4K. And it gives you, he said watching it on like a high quality Blu-ray or 4K is the closest to how it really was to see the movie and to actually watch it. It's completely pristine. And so he's like, if you're a collector and a fan of this movie, it's a no-brainer that that's the way to see it. So there's like this whole thing tied to VHS, which I still like VHS and whatever, and it's cool. But it's kind of like that whole argument and that kind of thing is just kind of stupid and silly. So I thought that was interesting. But that being said, I still buy DVDs and whatnot. So this Mel Gibson movie, when I had heard about this movie actually fairly recently again in my travels on YouTube and some people that do have movie channels, and I guess which I didn't realize that there are two versions of this movie. There's the theatrical version, which this one is, and then there's a director's cut. And I've heard that there's a director's cut that came out, I think, on DVD or Blu-ray, and I heard that the director's cut is actually really, really awesome. It's far different than the theatrical version. So I picked this up anyway. I was hoping it might be the director's cut, but I guess the director's cut is a little bit harder to find. I have not seen the director's cut. And, this movie, so I watched it when I bought it, and it's okay. I don't know, like, it's an interest. I thought this movie was going to be more of just like kind of a gritty, revenge movie. I knew it was about Mel Gibson's character, who he plays this cop in Boston, and his daughter goes missing or something, and she ends up getting killed, and he finds her, and then it's about him kind of becoming this crazed vigilante, and he just becomes this crazy man trying to find the people who killed his daughter. And I thought it was going to be more of a straightforward, revenge movie, and it's really not. It's really not. It's kind of like, again, Mel Gibson's great in it, but it's kind of like a movie that starts off where you feel it's going to be a relatively simple premise, but then when you get into the story, um, the plot reveal as to why she dies, and she dies pretty early in the film, and I feel like she dies too early because there's so outside of Mel Gibson's character, there's not really anybody in the movie that I really remember or that I really kind of cared about. And it felt rushed. They kill her off pretty soon. It's really like kind of over the top and just overly dramatic, which I thought was a little bit, it would have been cool to be pulled in a little bit more to the movie or to kind of have some empathy towards her, to Mel Gibson's daughter, her character. I didn't really, she was just kind of thrown on the screen, and then you're like, oh no, she just got brutally murdered, and it's like, okay, that's the centerpiece of the story, but I don't really know who she is, and I'm not really emotionally drawn to her, and all those kinds of things. So it was kind of, and the other thing with all the other characters on the screen, Mel Gibson's the only one that is somebody you want to see and you want to watch. Everybody else is just kind of in the background, so it's just kind of this thing. And and I thought it was going to be more of a straightforward kind of revenge movie, but it ends up becoming this thing of when they have this plot reveal as to why she gets murdered. It's really this like grand. It's kind of the whole like explanation is like this grand kind of conspiracy. From the whole premise or the whole explanation is that it's actually this larger than life mass conspiracy that's going on in the government, and it's like this international kind of conspiracy that's happening, and she actually worked for the government, and it's this whole big thing. And it's so like, I felt like when they kind of go into that and you get this feeling that this is going to be just a, you kind of felt, okay, this is going to be just a low down and dirty kind of revenge tale, but then it becomes this like massive kind of convoluted conspiracy theory kind of a thing as to why she was killed. It just gets so complicated and so like convoluted and overly bloated with like all of these with them trying to explain as to why she was killed, and then it goes into all of these different things as to why things happened the way they were, as far as like now it involves all of these like international governments and the CIA and special ops, and all of these like behind closed doors meetings behind government officials. And it kind of like when you kind of when that was kind of revealed, I just kind of checked out of the movie. I just thought, oh my god, this is like so overblown and just so they tried to make it so overly complicated when it could have been just pretty simple and just a good story. But it's just so convoluted and just overly complex, and it's not even executed very well when it comes to trying to explain something that is really on this mass scale, and it kind of does play in the whole like conspiracy theory thing of where people like, there are the folks who believe, who are part of like the loose change crowd to a degree, that believe in 9/11 was an inside, job, and it kind of plays into that whole, the whole Alex Jones conspiracy theory thing, which is completely fucking asinine and ridiculous. This movie kind of plays a little bit into that, and it's for me it's like off-putting because all of that stuff I feel is like complete lies. And so this movie kind of has that as the explanation, and it just I couldn't make it. Again, Mel Gibson was great in it. It does have some good action sequences, but again, I'm not really caring about any of the characters that are on the screen, especially his daughter, which is the center, supposed to be the centerpiece of the movie, and this whole conspiracy thing, this whole like that's supposed to be on such a grand scale that is the reason why these things happen to her, and all of the this kind of double life that she's had. It just doesn't. It's so ambitious, but they don't know how to tie everything together and give you, a real explanation, or to really have some closure with the story, and especially when it's so overly complicated, and it didn't need to be complicated. And this movie's like, I don't know, standard hour and a half, 2 hours, and I did not make it all the way through. I watched it for probably about an hour, and I was just like, and the other thing too is this movie. There are some good action sequences, but this movie is really really slow and kind of boring when that's not happening. And I found myself after I didn't make it all the way through. I watched it for about an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour, and I just took it out. I couldn't watch it. So I don't recommend this movie. Maybe someday I'll see the director's cut. Maybe the director's cut is much better, like from what I heard. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how different it would be to be able to save this movie. But I don't recommend this movie. It's really really overblown. It's overly stuffed and poorly made, really, as a film. Mel Gibson's great in it, but not a movie I recommend at all, really. And it's not, if you're a Mel Gibson fan, even in that regard, I wouldn't recommend it. So, not very happy with this movie. I will probably, I don't know, maybe sell it back, sell it to Goodwill, or I don't know, do something with it. But then again, we'll see. So this is the second video I've done for this whole series of the video haul from last week. So stay tuned for more coming your way. Thanks again, and we will see you soon. Peace.